Hello! It's so very good to see all of you. You are watching this, or you are being made to watch this, because you want to try your hands or paws at 3D scanning, at pirating something out of reality and digitizing it and making a cool Homeworld and VRChat out of it. And it doesn't have to be your home. It can be someplace near and dear to you, or far away and dear to you. I've done a lot of 3D scans like that myself. Or it could be like your dinner. It'd be really cool to 3D scan a world that's like a burger you're about to eat, and then everyone hangs out on the burger in the VRChat world. That'd be fun. So, first up, what is 3D scanning? What is photogrammetry? I'm going to use those two terms interchangeably. In this context, it is, you take a whole lot of pictures of something, you run those pictures through some software, and you can generate a 3D model. That's what I'll be talking about. And that's what we'll be learning to do. So, what to expect? This is the basics. Like any good, complicated thing in life, there's people who are good at it, and they always tell you, learn the basics. This is exactly like that. I'm going to be one of those annoying people that says, you really got to master the basics before you move on to worrying about getting your color correction just right. But that's fine, because we're going to cover the basics. And if you really pay attention to what I'm talking about, I don't know if your first scan is going to be as good as the 3D scanned rocks in Metal Gear Solid 5, but they're going to be close. My first scan was a couple of blobs. I was trying to do a room. So, we're going to talk about some of that. Those are my cameras. I own them, and if you want, I have one right here. This is the camera I use to 3D scan stuff, and I think it looks pretty good. I've got a whole bunch of examples, and I wish I had time to talk about all of them and gush about all of them, but I seriously don't. So, cameras, you can scan cameras, you can also scan people and hands. The one up there? That's my hand. My friend Logan, that's his hand. He scanned it. And we did it on the same day. That's why the lighting is exactly the same. And then the other hand, that's Leo Fox's hand. I scanned his hand at a panel I gave at Furality. No, not Furality, MFF 2021. I did it in 15 photos in poor lighting, and it came together great. You can also scan fursuits and fursuit accessories. The dragon is a friend Green Dragon, and I walked him through how to use his Google Pixel to take some video and 3D scan his head. The other one is my head. You can also scan yourself. This one was a little tricky. And here I am! Would you like to pass me around? I know you want to. Oh. I did that with video, and just on a rotating chair, swivel office chair, and spun around a couple times. Dropped down, spun around at another height. And, it came out pretty well. What you can do with that, besides just making game assets, is you can 3D print the models you make. You can copy stuff. It's so much fun. And I'm going to be using that, my head, to help me make a fursuit head. And it's going to fit really well because I have a really good base. Scaling my head to my head from my 3D printer, it was pretty easy. I just put some boxes on the floor, laid it between them, and measured the distance and scaled it in Blender. You can also, I told you can 3D scan people. That's my friend Kevin, and then the other one is me. And we did this on an extremely bright fall day with my then new iPhone 12, and it came out really well. But because the day was so bright and so clear, there's shadows, and just under our arms there's these big dark shadows. You can use some software to try and clean that up, but the best thing is just to shoot on a bright day or an overcast day. Things can go wrong. Don't be discouraged when things go wrong. I love this photo set. If I take one picture out of it, it stops being Escherville. This is one of the photo sets that I say we, I mean, I was in the US, that everyone in Berlin took of Estral for the virtual ferns project that I helped work on. Here's some other scans. They came out really well. This one didn't come out really well. It was dark in there, and it looks like a bunch of blobs. No big deal, because the purpose of this scan was just to give the 3D modelers really good scale reference. The scan came out super good. That's all of our scans put together, and it looks pretty okay. Some people in the audience know what building this is. That's a story for another day, though. Again, more scans I took. This one was at BLFC 2021. I just went for a hike before the con got going. I learned a lot about this scan. Wish I had time to go into it. That's St. Louis Canyon in Illinois. Same, also St. Louis Canyon in Illinois, but this is in a different piece of software. This software is called Reality Capture, and it is super good. It's so good. Like, ignore the rock. Look behind the rock. Look at that sand. It's so crisp and perfect. That's polygons. That's polygons. And the mesh, the model that Reality Capture generated was 500 million polygons when it was done. You can't throw that into a VRChat world, but I'll talk a little bit about what you can do so you can. So to get started, you're going to need some equipment. You're going to need some kind of camera. What kind of camera it is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is it's around 8 megapixels or more. That's really anything below that, and you just don't quite have the resolution. That's not to say that like video doesn't work, because instead of being 8 megapixels, a 1080p video is like 2K. But anyway, so you need a camera. Phones will do just fine. I love phone cameras. I might make fun of them, but I also love phone cameras because they've got all these algorithms in them that make it hard for them to take a bad picture. It's hard for them to take a good picture. But I don't want to downplay the feat that is using a tiny crummy sensor and a tiny crummy lens and getting good photos out of them. Good color photos that are good enough for photogrammetry. What's better is a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. The downside is you actually have to know how to use one. My parents gave me one a couple years ago for Xmas, and it was a great camera to learn on, but a bad camera to throw money at. Also, there's many other ways to do 3D scans. I'm not going to touch on them, but the workflow is different. They're just fine too. The iPhone and the new iPhones, the LiDAR scanner, and the same with the Kinect and like the face unlock on iPhone. It's different methods of getting just of the same data set. And they're super fast. They are very low detail. I might make fun of them too, but the speed at which you can just scan an entire building, like I did my whole apartment in 15 minutes with my real camera. It would have taken an afternoon. The model is low detail, but that's not always important. Sometimes you just need it. Next piece of equipment you'll need is a computer to run the software. Any computer will do, but there's a lot of caveats. You want something that's not going to overheat, because these scans, how long is it going to take to process? It might take hours. It'll probably take hours. So my scans have taken days. One took 6 days. 6 days where my CPU was maxed out 100%. If I hadn't built the computer myself and wasn't confident that it could handle that, the power supply might blow up or something. I've blown up power supplies before, never doing photo scans, but there's a reason you don't buy the super cheap power supplies. I found out why. So just, if it's a laptop, maybe prop it up on, some blocks or something so it can breathe a little bit more. It might be going for a while. Next up is software. I like to use 3 pieces of software, and I use them all for different purposes. First one I found is called Meshroom. And this is built out of the Alice Vision project. And that by itself is totally unusable. Meshroom is a really good GUI for it. Meshroom is also intended for software developers or people with a lot of free time on their hands to use. It is not suitable for a production environment because it's not good enough yet. It's getting there. Um, the other reason it's very slow right now. It takes a long time. A scan that takes an hour to process in the next piece of software, Metashape, might take 6 in Meshroom. But I kind of like the Meshroom workflow. It's all node based. It's like working on a material in Blender, and you just drag and drop your pictures onto the window. It imports them, and then you click start. That's all you got to do. You can walk away and, like, I don't know, watch a movie or work on your academic papers or flex in a mirror while it's running. It's great. And then you come back, and the end result probably won't be that great. But the point is, it's all node based. So you just click on a node, duplicate it, change some settings, maybe try a few iterations, and go. I have some node trees that are very, very long as I'm trying to tweak things a little bit more. And then I realize, why am I spending this much time on this? But also, don't be a fanboy. Sometimes things work in Meshroom and they don't work at all in anything else. So just use the tool that's appropriate. But also, you don't have time to wait for Meshroom to finish processing. Then there's Metashape. Metashape is unfree software. It's called paid. It's not as convenient, the whole free factor. However, the trial is very forgiving. It just, you can just leave it installed forever. So even if you can't afford the $100 license, it's usually around $100, just leave it installed. It'll expire, and it's very fast. So you can test your photos to see if they will work, and then, I've done this, and then process them in Meshroom, where it takes a lot longer. Here's the next downside. I forgot to mention this in the computer spot. You'll probably want for most cases, you'll need a NVIDIA GPU to process your model in high detail. It needs CUDA to do the depth mapping, and it's a big bummer, but not Metashape. Metashape, it can work on an AMD GPU through OpenCL. It can also run very slowly on your CPU. It takes forever, but I've had my little teeny tiny travel laptop with me. I've 3D scanned the weird hotels I sometimes stay in, and then just let it cook. And it does cook itself. Yeah. And Metashape is also a piece of software where the Pro version, if you don't need it, you don't need it. It's not like an iPhone Pro where it's like a Pro product for the professional phone user. It's not that. The Pro features are like for topographical mapping, stuff the casual person actually doesn't want to do. And then the last one is the monster. That's reality capture. Reality capture is so fast and so good, but we all still hate it because as a coin slot, you got to keep pumping money into it over an internet connection, otherwise it shuts down. But it's really, really, really good. So it's also the only suitable one that's really suitable for like tight deadlines where if you messed up your photos and you can't go back to the location to take more pictures, it has the tools where you can save that. You can rescue the photo shoot by manually aligning everything. It does that. Still. Oh, okay. I guess I said it has a coin slot. They recently changed their pricing structure, so now mere mortals can afford it. It's actually affordable now. You don't just have to shell out thousands of dollars for, like, I don't know, a 1-month license. I drilled at it for a while, but now you can just give it like $1.50 to run your photos. It's fine. The last thing you're going to need is patience. I wish I was joking, but I did say these things can take forever to run, especially if you don't have a monster computer like I do. That's why I was motivated to build such a fast computer so I could stop waiting. It took, I've waited a long time for some of these things to run. I'm just going to leave it right there. Have some patience. Yeah. So first thing, onto actually 3D scanning stuff, find yourself a suitable location. I've given these panels before, and I get lots of questions. People tried, and it doesn't work out. Nothing against them. It took me a while to figure out what was a good location, too. And usually you did it in a dark room. You try to photo scan a vase that's made out of translucent glass. It's also shiny, and it's on a shiny countertop that's just beige. And that's why it didn't work out. That's like a worst case scenario. Find a room that's bright and evenly lit, or go outside when it's an overcast sky. Otherwise, you're going to get shadows everywhere, and you're going to see those shadows on your model, and it'll look bad. They'll never come out. Agiasoft, which makes Metashape, they make a tool for that. I've had mixed luck with it. It's called Delighter. What you really want, also, so if you have an object that is, again, like a worst case scenario, you can modify the object to work. You can like paint it white, and then I've bought like some speckled gravel spray paint from the hardware store and speckled it. So I was able to 3D scan my impossible object that way. Or, if you don't want to destroy the thing you're scanning, put it on a really good surface that tracks really well. Wood grain, natural rock, I know you can read, but newspaper, if you can like get it to lay flat. Those big coffee table books, Georgia O'Keeffe makes a great 3D scan surface. Seriously. We just throw our book down, slap our hands on it, and go. Again, it's irregular, it's textured in like the color sense, not the touchy-feely sense. And that way you have something that your object is on for the software to find more unique features about it and actually get you a model. Things that are bad, but aren't necessarily like the end of the world. Glossy surfaces and glass, which makes cars a nightmare. If you get just the right lighting, so like, the highlights from the sun are minimized on the car, you'll get most of it, and you'll just have to rebuild the spots that didn't scan right by hand. And then there'll be weird bright spots on the model. You can cover shiny stuff in baby powder just to get rid of the shiny. I've had a friend, she had some inflatables she wanted a 3D scan for her VRChat world. So she threw baby powder on them, and it worked fine. It worked well enough for her purposes. The other thing that doesn't scan too well, and I've run into this many times, trees scan great. Again, wood scans great. That wood grain, it's an irregular surface. It's great. But trees plus wind, not so much, because the leaves blow around, the branches blow around, the tree moves. You don't want stuff to move in your 3D scans, and the trees come out as an ugly, horrible mess of blobs that'll just destroy your poly budget in a VRChat world. The next thing, I don't know why I didn't put this under ugly or the root of all evil, are beige walls, because they're just flat and off-white. At least they're not just stark white, but they're so boring. When you take pictures, your software is going to look for little unique ththings, and it's going to classify those usually by contrast. So, transition between like a light surface to something dark, like a dot or letters on newspaper. It loves those. When it's just a white wall, there's nothing for it to see. And usually I take a bit of painter's tape and just start slapping them up on the wall so it works a bit better. There's ways to get around that. Maybe you can up the contrast or something, but I've had mixed results. Also, shadows, because they stain your model. Like I said, underneath Kevin and my arms, it's just dark. It doesn't look good. Also, shadows that move. So if you're outside and you're taking a long time to scan, the sun's going to move, the shadows are going to move, and so you would have had a shadow on the ground that would have been baked in that texture, and now, as that shadow moves, you're going to have all these dark slices on the ground, and the tech colors won't blend and it'll look bad. And the worst things, though, are rooms lit by a single light bulb, because there's shadows everywhere and it's never dark enough. Seriously. Also, if you're inside and there's sunbeams piling in from outside, they're beautiful, they move. I mean, you can, take video of your cat walking and always staying in the nice warm sunbeam. They move and it'll look horrible. So my first room scan that worked, I did with my cell phone. It was an 8-megapixel camera. And I had huge pits in the floor where the sunbeams were, because they were so bright that it maxed out on my camera sensor. It's just too bright. It didn't see anything. It couldn't match anything. And also, they were all over the place because I did it at winter when the sun was low in the sky, and it moved in the 30 minutes I took the photos. So I did it on an overcast day, and it came out totally okay. The next thing that's going to mess with you, and this has messed with me, and I got to go in and color correct all my photos, is when outside is super bright, but inside is not. So you take a picture of your wall, and the camera is going to adjust its exposure to your dim room. You move the camera over a little bit, you take a picture, it's pointed at your window. it's going to adjust its exposure to the outside. So now the outside is normal lighting, and the inside is just pitch black. The photo won't line up, and maybe you'll have a gap in your scan. Yeah. So, I don't know. I do know. Go to an evenly lit room, or do all your scans on overcast days where I basically do that. I just keep my camera kit ready with the location in mind, and when it's a good sky, I cancel my plans and do it. And yeah, you'll have a great time if you find a suitable location to take your photos. Some tips for taking photos, because this is the most important part. If you do a good job taking your photos, you will have a good result. Even if there's like a new photogrammetry project on the market and it sucks, you feed good photos through that, they'll come out great. I guarantee it. I won't make any guarantees except for that. Seriously. If you take good photos, you'll have a good time. You can put your software on the lowest quality settings, that on the preview quality that looks like garbage, and it'll still come out good if you take good photos. To take good photos, don't move anything. Do not move anything. I've got a couple scans where I've got like 5 lens caps in the room because I moved my lens cap throughout the scan and it saw it in different locations. It wasn't enough to totally ruin the scan and, make the cameras not align correctly, but I've got 5 lens caps. Why do I have 5 lens caps in there? It looks bad. And if you move bigger stuff, or bigger stuff is moving, then you're going to have even more problems. Your cameras might not even align, and you just have to take your pictures over again, or laboriously line them up by hand later. And then the end result is going to look weird because they won't generate the mesh right. Next thing, I already said even lighting. Seriously, outside on an overcast day, because photography lights are expensive because they are in fact super bright. It works really, really well. That overcast light, it's soft, white, it's not even white, it's just gray. It kind of sucks the color out of everything, but that's good for game development because now you have a neutral tone object you can throw on under any game lighting and it looks great. It doesn't look like it's just an alien. It's not like you took a rock from Mars and put it on Earth. It would be the wrong color. Anyways, I'm sure that's true. And also, that nice overcast sky erases shadows. Part of it is it's not quite bright enough to make strong shadows, and the other part of it is there's so much light bouncing around, it's not directional, that the shadows just even out. Next thing, don't turn on your flash. All that's going to do is create more shadows in every direction the camera is looking. It's horrible. Don't do it, and it makes the lighting really uneven. I want to talk about phone cameras. Well, I already did. Phone cameras are brilliant devices. You run into their limitations really fast, or you got to download sometimes they're very hard to use apps. I heard Open Camera on Android is good. I've used it. I had mixed success. It didn't save the photos quite fast enough for me. It would drop some, but that was on kind of a middling Android phone. If you use something faster, it'll probably be better. Anyways, like I said, they won't take great photos, but they'll take good photos, or at least passable photos. They'll make sure you can always recognize something in the scene. That's not always good enough for photogrammetry, but hey. For taking video with phone cameras, I've only had success on bright days. Usually when it's a little dim, you get like weird compression artifacts or just blurs in the frames. Real cameras, they take great pictures. Or, maybe if you buy a good one. My Canon Rebel T7i, I ran into its limitations pretty quickly once I learned the settings that were good. And that's because it wasn't a professional camera, but it still is an excellent camera for what it's capable of. And it's a really good deal. It's like $100 or $200 camera body, and the lenses are cheap too. It's made out of plastic. It doesn't weigh anything. The battery lasts forever, and it's 24 megapixels. Getting really sharp, clear photos, it doesn't do it. Mine, at least, wasn't that good at focusing. More expensive cameras, you need to know more about cameras to use them correctly. Seriously, I tried to throw money at this problem and just wasted money. I'm glad I learned on the inexpensive Canon camera that my parents got me. so that I can appreciate good cameras. And I have a good camera now that I do know how to use. The next thing is, take lots of pictures. I've got a couple of 128 gigabyte SD cards. It blows my mind those things exist now, even when they're like the size of my pinky fingernail, when they're like super small. I shoot JPEGs and RAWs, and I take more pictures than I could possibly need. I usually take more pictures than I need because you're gonna get bad pictures. And when you have bad pictures, just get rid of them. It's fine. Maybe you could like fiddle with the settings in the software to save it, or just get rid of them because it'll come out fine anyways, if you took enough pictures. That comes to the last thing. Review your pictures as you're taking them and after, before you dump them into your software. Review them to make sure you're actually taking photos that work and aren't dark or blurry. It's really important. You can, again, you might not have access to the location a second time. And this can take a long time because you get home from the photo shoot and you sit down in front of your computer and you just want to click start on the software, look at the pictures first. Get rid of the blurry ones. You will have blurry ones with the kind of camera settings you're going to be running. You will have blurry ones. And get rid of them. Don't run them. Maybe later you can add them back in if you really need them and you think it'll help. Taking pictures. This is the most important part. I can't stress this enough. I already did. It's how you take your pictures. My first room scans didn't come out because of how I took my pictures. And this diagram, that's from the Metashape manual. It's really good. It shows if you wanted to, say you've got a mural and you want to photo scan a mural instead of taking just normal pictures of it. Start at one side and just take a picture, take a step over. So in your viewfinder, you see like maybe a third of it is new stuff. So 2/3 old. Take a picture, step over. Take a picture, step over, and just go in a line. Don't stand in one place and just take a picture and go like that. That's great for making a panorama. Not good for photogrammetry because it needs a parallax. It needs depth. What you're doing when you take many pictures in a straight line like that is you're giving it depth like your eyes provide you. You have two eyes so you can see it, so you can see depth. It gives more information. If you just had one big eye, everything would be flat to you. So that's what you're doing when you stand in one place and just rotate. You got to move. Never take a picture in the same place you're standing. If you're going to scan a room and not just one wall, back up to the other wall. Face. Back up to a wall and face the other wall. Hold your camera, take a picture, take a step over. Take a picture, take a step over, and just keep on doing it. And I have a very wide-angle lens on my Sony Alpha 7 R2. And it can get a lot of the ground in there, but it's still, even though it's 14 millimeters and the field of view is just barely sub fisheye, it doesn't quite see enough floor. So if I don't actually point it at the floor, I don't get any floor. So I have a lot of scans of buildings that I can't use for VRChat because there's nothing to stand on. There's no ground. So kind of take a picture up, a picture, straight across, a picture down, and go. Make nice, smooth turns around the corners because you want continuity of pictures. If you were to take a sharp right-hand turn around, the right-hand bend in your wall, you've just broken your continuity and the software won't be able to match the pictures up. That happened once in Virtual Ferns. We made it work because we were awesome. If you're going around an object, again, just lots of pictures. Orbit around it. Make a big cloud. Try to get every angle you can. This next thing, real photographers know about this. I didn't. I'm starting to be like a real photographer, although I just still take thousands of boring photos of something, and some of them are interesting. So when you're setting your ISO, you always want to go as low as you can. You normally want to do that, but here it's really important because that ISO noise is going to mess with the software's ability to match up photos. It's horrible. And next up, setting your aperture. Set it so that whatever you're taking pictures of is in focus. Infinite depth of field is great, but we know it blurs stuff. And also, if you just want to do something that's on a table and you don't want the wall behind it, that's just going to increase your processing time. So just set it so the thing on the table is in focus. And then your shutter speed, I don't know, man. however long you can keep that camera steady with the aperture closed down and ISO 100, you do you. Just try to just manage with it. Otherwise, use a tripod. Here is a video of one of my photo scans of the model I'm going to talk about. So I was in a forest with my mom taking a hike, and I also do this hobby because it gets me out of the house. And she knows me. I saw a good location that would make an interesting VRChat world. I stopped to scan it, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm going in a circle around the world. I'm going in a circle around it, and I'm pointing my camera up. I'm taking a picture, and I'm going down, and I'm making sure I have a lot of overlap everywhere. And even then, you can see there's a couple people in the background. A little bit of inconsistency is totally fine. The picture, if you want to go back, St. Louis Canyon, there was a ton of people on that beach. It was fine. I just took more pictures, so I got the bits behind them. Since they never stood in one place for too long, the software never matched them up and they never appeared in the scan. And if you have a super wide angle lens, you're not going to get a lot of resolution per field of view degree, so you also want close-up detail shots as well. That's something that took me a while to learn. And that's the end of that video. Next up, oh, sorry, I've got never mind. So you've taken your pictures, they're great, you're great, process your model. So, I've already said this, review your pictures before you just dump them in the software. It'll save you time. Once you've done that, dump them into the software and press start. I like to just walk away. Maybe if I know what I'm doing ahead of time, I'll adjust the settings so they'll be just right. Or usually I'll just do it on low because I don't want to wait days to see that, oh no, I did something wrong here and I can see it wrong sooner. Then you wait. And then when you're done waiting, you review the results and you try again. Here's another video of what that feels like. It can take a while. This took 40 minutes on my 16-core, 32-thread CPU with a 3090, and this was like normal detail and reality capture. Like I said, I've waited a long time. This is sped up 40 times. It's 40 minutes. It can be a while. Do anything else. That's my strong recommendation. Like, get better at writing fiction, or I already said that. Next up is a video of what can happen to your results. They won't always look right. They're not always going to look right, and use the tools in the software to figure out what's going on. So my camera here, as I'm trying to scan it, the textures they look bad. There's parts that aren't. There's parts that they're just not right. They're kind of lumpy. And what's going on here is I'm using one of the built-in tools in Meshroom, and this is the best implementation of this. This is called Look Through Camera. When you click that button and you click on one of your pictures, it zooms the virtual viewpoint camera around and lines it up perfectly with the model. So any parts that are missing, you'll see in your picture. Oh, right there. Yeah, right there. That is, I had an alignment problem. It somehow, it got the alignment wrong on my camera. So that will happen. You'll see pictures that you took that it claims was inside a wall. You can't be inside a wall and take a picture. But so what do? Just delete them. If you really need them, you can save them, but just delete them. That's also part where Meshroom isn't as good. If you got to delete a picture, you got to start all over again. And like I said, it's for people with render farms or people who can wait. So in Meshroom or Reality in Metashape, you can just delete the photo and it'll delete some of the associated points. The initial scan will never be. I haven't seen it be as good as if like I do the scan with that picture deleted, but sometimes that takes a long time. Next up are the results. This looks like kind of ugly. I know it's not done yet. I knew it was going to look like this when I took the scan, and in the back of my head, I was thinking, oh yeah, but I could do this to make it look better. Because I'm not going to get a bunch of the leaves of the trees, of the pine trees that were so high up, because my camera doesn't quite have the resolution for it with the wide angle lens. And I didn't have enough time. It was starting to rain, so I had like 15 minutes to do this and not a second more. So that's all I got. But what can you do with that? And, you know, if you're not using a very high-end camera, this might be what your scan looks like anyways. Unless you do it right, of course. So what can you do? Well, you can take it into Blender and you can clean it up. That's what I did here. I added a plane for the ground to fill in some of the holes in the ground. Software doesn't like just big geometric planes. I subdivided it a bunch of times. I added a dome for, you know, I didn't have a tripod to take like an HDRI map to get the lighting perfect or make a good skybox or anything, but you can just throw a dome in there and it'll get textured too. And there's trees far and beyond what I managed to scan, so it's going to have a bunch of trees on the texture, you'll see. And it came out great. I also decimated the mesh because the end result had up like 100 million polygons. You throw that into a VRChat world, it's gonna have a bad time. 100 million polygons and just the model without textures. That's many gigabytes. Just 2 million polygons is, I don't know, 50, 100 megabytes. So I hit the whole thing with the decimate modifier and tweaked it. Used some vertex groups and got it looking how I wanted. Then I imported it back into the software and ran the texture stage, and it looks great. It looks great. It performs pretty okay. A few things I could have done to improve that, but hey. Then you export your textured model into Unity. In, let's see, in Metashape, in Reality Capture, you can also downscale from a higher resolution model and generate occlusion maps and normal maps. You'll want to do that. It makes things look better without needing the polygon detail. Throw it into Unity, and as we know, you do just throw it, you just drag and drop. And, I'm still learning how to make the lighting look just right. I usually have to fight it. I gotta tweak my material settings. It always imports them with way too much metallic. I don't know why. It's Unity. I've learned not to ask questions. Throw it in there and tweak your lighting, tweak your colors so they look close enough. If you're really good, you'll remember to bring a device called a tape measure to measure how big the world is so you can scale it correctly. I forget about half the time because I'm awesome. After you've done that, a couple finishing touches, which makes it playable, is add a collision mesh to the world, or just take a couple Unity cubes and place them so where people can stand on them, and then disable the mesh render so they don't see them. It's fine because people won't fall through the floor then. One issue you do have, and you'll see this in a couple of my worlds, where I didn't make like a custom collision mesh for the world. I just took the actual mesh of the photo scan and used that as the collider. And in Unity, at least, when the ground is really high resolution, avatars tend to not walk quite right. Or there'll be weird bugs. Well, just the geometry attacks them and they freeze up and they have to respawn because otherwise they're just done, son. So here I took a big plane and I copied my model in Blender. I deleted the trees, and I used the shrink wrap modifier to shrink it to the ground. And then, because the shrink wrap modifier has its own ideas about how it should work, I, manually tweaked some of the points to get them to actually line up correctly. Then I threw that on top of my finished model, and it came out great. People can walk correctly, the trees don't stop them. So it's a bit, in a virtual space, it's easier just to make things where you just pass through. And yeah, came out really well. And follow my advice, yours will too. It's over! First off, I'd like to thank myself for holding this panel. Next up, I'd like to thank my friend Green Dragon for letting me use his fursuit head scan. I'd also like to thank my friend Kevin for letting me use his fursuit. And the hands. I'd like to thank my hand for letting me use it. I want to thank my friend Logan, and I want to thank Leo Fox at Fox by Daylight on Twitter. last piece of software is discussed. I'm not going to tell you where to download Unity. You know where. Meshroom is at Alice Vision, Metashape, Aegeosoft, Reality Capture, Capturing Reality, and Blender at blender.org. We love Blender. Any questions?
A few questions. What personally is the largest thing you have scanned?
The tallest thing I've scanned has been, I'm not sure. There's a historical windmill. It's historical because the Historical Society says so. In my hometown, I don't know how tall it is, but it's 3 or 4 stories tall. And I used my zoom lens carefully to do that. Also, there's St. Louis Canyon in southern Illinois by Starved Rock. I don't know how tall that is, but it's very tall. But the largest thing, it's a 3-story tall building. That would be Feiner Hall at SIU. That was 3,500 photos across 2 days in late October.
Another one. What is a personal favorite subject that you like to scan?
Probably people, because they're hard. Because you gotta stand super still. And humans can't. So there's me with my camera just running around them, tripping over fire pits. Not like that ever happens. And yeah, it's always a challenge. I gotta play with my quality settings, and yeah, it's good. And also they're useful because, like, you scan your hands, you can maybe make bone hands to go along with the big skull you slap over your head when you go to FurCons.
Alrighty. I think that's it for questions. I think we're good to go ahead and wrap up. Go ahead.
Hold on, I think Ferret's got one.
Oh, am I hearable now?
Yeah.
All right. So when you do a 3D scan of an object, you said you had this sitting down. When you scan it, you scan it all around. You get all your photos. What happens to the edges that are on something? Do you flip it over and then take more photos? Or is that something that actually has, like, its own process?
Well, for doing that camera, if you wouldn't mind just giving it, I was out on, there's like a little awning or something. I'm in a 2nd-story apartment, so I just go out there. I'm in the shade of the building, and so I don't have any like bright spots on the camera. I just sit down. I put this on something that's I've got a couple reflectors. They're just bright white and textureless. And I set my other camera up on a tripod and just take pictures. And then I come in and rotate a little bit, and I take another picture. And then I rotate it, take a picture, and I keep going. And then I flip it this way, I go all the way around, I flip it upside down, and just keep going to try to get all the sides. Meshroom has Metashape, has a really good setting where it'll just ignore features and aspects of the image that are common across all images and don't move at all. So it just removes the background. You saw me scanning this camera in Meshroom. Meshroom isn't a good tool to do that. That was one of the reasons I was having so much trouble with it, because it doesn't do that. You can't mask out anything. The support hasn't been built yet. But just, if there's other stuff to pay attention to, the software is going to pay attention to it. Either way, you just have to know how to bring that out.
So the software itself doesn't care if it's looking at something from above or below if you have those photos.
Yeah, so as long as there's enough photos going from, say, the top around to the bottom, even if this is resting on something, you'll be fine, as long as the background doesn't change too much. Or
so more of a sphere of pictures instead of a cylinder of pictures.
Yeah. Here, let me just go all the way back. There. Yeah. So on my Canon to the right, I had that on a tripod, just went all over it, pictures didn't come out too well when I was looking up at the sky because this, like I said, the brightness issue, the sky was so bright, and then under the camera was not. And there, that one I just rotated around. You can see I've touched this model up. I took it into Blender and just, with a black paintbrush in the texture, in the texture tool, just painted over like there's a couple white spots along the lens. That's my background coming through. That got textured on there because it wasn't quite perfect on the edges, so I just painted over them. It was fine. So you might have a bit of work, it's just some finishing work to do, but it'll happen. Just kind of bang your head against the wall.
All right, thank you very much.
A question. Let me know when you can hear me.
Yeah, go.
Okay, there we go. There we go. So I know a lot of people might want to do photogrammetry to, preserve some, room that they have or some figurine. I know a lot of people want to preserve things like architecture that might, be run down or being destroyed eventually, even graffiti. Are there resources for people to connect with local people who in the community who want to preserve things or have more, landmarks to learn more about, photogrammetry, preserving things in their area? Like,
I don't know.
Are the Reddits, Discords, groups together? Yeah.
Well, I'm not in any of them, and that's probably why people occasionally yell at me when I go photoscan things. I've said this in past panels, but I've had people just be extremely livid at me, terrified of the dude who's taking too many photos. That is, what are they doing? So, I've had a couple contacts before after they saw one of my panels. Like they said, I'm part of a historical society. I'd like to preserve something. What's the best way for me to do that? I want to 3D scan it. Do you have some tips? So I talked to them. I don't know of any local resources. Maybe just go to if you live in a town, it might have a local historical society. Just talk to them. But as for widespread collaboration, I don't know. There's probably a Reddit somewhere for it.
No problem. Just try to get resources. Thank you.
And that's it. I so glad to see you guys. Maybe I'll see you next year. Bye.